Don't interfere. One wrong move in Hormuz could ignite US-China clash. China backs Iran and challenges Trump's naval blockade. The high-stakes showdown over Iran's oil lifeline.
What if one narrow sea route could spark a conflict between the world's two biggest powers? What if a single mistake at sea could turn tension into a global crisis? Right now, that danger is very real, and it's unfolding in the Strait of Hormuz.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our YouTube channel, Maz Reporter. Today, we're breaking down a rapidly escalating situation that started as a US-Iran conflict, but is now pulling in China and raising fears of a much bigger showdown. At the center of it all is oil, power, and one of the most important shipping routes in the world. Let's simplify what's happening and why it matters to you.
What just happened? In the past 36 hours, between 15 and 20 ships have passed through the Strait of Hormuz. Many of them are linked to China, Russia, Pakistan, and Iran. At the same time, the United States has started enforcing a naval blockade, but not of the entire strait. Under orders from Donald Trump, the U.S. Navy is now blocking ships connected to Iranian ports. This operation is being carried out by United States Central Command. The goal? To cut off Iran's oil exports and pressure it back into negotiations.
Why Hormuz matters. Let's make this simple. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway where nearly 20% of the world's oil passes every day. If something disrupts this route, oil prices rise instantly, fuel becomes expensive. Global economies feel the shock, and that's already happening. Oil prices have jumped above $100 per barrel. And that affects everything from your fuel costs to food prices.
Now, here is an interesting fact. Beyond simple energy needs, the U.S. surge into the Strait of Hormuz is a calculated power play. Despite its own vast reserves and grip on Venezuelan oil, Washington isn't hunting for crude. Rather, it is weaponizing economic leverage over China and fortifying the petrodollar's global dominance. Here's where things get serious. China depends heavily on this region. About 40% of its oil imports come from the Persian Gulf. Around 30% of its LNG supply passes through Hormuz.
So, when the U.S. blocks Iranian-linked ships, China feels the pressure too. China is also one of Iran's biggest oil buyers. Analysts suggest the blockade is designed to pressure Beijing into mediating a ceasefire on American terms or making concessions on other geopolitical fronts.
The conflict has evolved into an economic battlefield for currency supremacy. The petroyuan. Iran recently began accepting payments in Chinese yuan to allow ships to pass through the strait safely. Currency war. A successful shift away from the dollar in oil trades would weaken U.S. global financial dominance. The blockade aims to halt these non-dollar transactions and force Iran back to the negotiating table on nuclear issues.
And now, Beijing is sending a clear message. China's defense minister Dong Jun said, "Our ships will continue to move. We expect others not to interfere. In simple terms, don't touch our ships."
Rising military tensions. This isn't just words. Earlier this year, China, Iran, and Russia conducted joint naval exercises in the region. China also has military presence nearby, including a base in Djibouti. Meanwhile, Iran's powerful force, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, is watching closely.
Now imagine this situation. A U.S. warship tries to stop a Chinese tanker. What happens next? Even a small misunderstanding, a radio miscommunication, a warning shot, a wrong move, could escalate into a direct confrontation. Maintaining a blockade so far from home is indeed a major military endeavor. Resource strain. The U.S. Navy currently has at least 15 warships in the region, but experts warn that a prolonged blockade will strain operations in the Indo-Pacific and Europe. Asymmetric threats. The U.S. is vulnerable to Iranian sea mines, drones, and coastal missiles in the narrow waterway, which neutralizes many of its traditional naval advantages.
Why this is so dangerous? This is no longer just about Iran. It's about global power balance. If the U.S. blocks ships,
It pressures Iran. But it also indirectly pressures China. And China cannot afford disruptions to its energy supply. That's why analysts are warning this situation could quickly spiral beyond control.
Allied refusal. Traditional allies including the UK, France, Germany, Spain, and Italy have all ruled out sending naval forces to support the blockade. Economic blowback. Many countries, particularly in Asia, are desperate for the strait to remain open. South Korea, for example, warned it could run out of LNG in just 9 days due to the disruption.
Impact on everyday people. Let's bring it back to real life. Here's what this means for you. Higher fuel prices, expensive transportation, rising food costs, increased shipping and airline prices. Even if you're far from the Middle East, you still feel the impact because oil powers the global economy.
What happens next? There are 3 possible outcomes. 1. Best case, the blockade pressures Iran and talks resume. 2. Middle scenario, tensions continue, oil prices stay high. 3. Worst case, a naval incident triggers a US-China confrontation. And that's the real fear. Because once major powers are directly involved, things become much harder to control.
Right now, the world is watching the Strait of Hormuz very closely. What do you think? Is this a regional issue or a global one? Will diplomacy step in, or will tensions take over? Is this a pressure strategy or a dangerous gamble? Drop your thoughts below. Stay informed, stay safe. I'll see you in the next one. Subscribe to our channel, Maz Reporter. Thanks for watching. Peace.